services, but the vision is to have a multilingual full service law firm in Des Moines, focusing on providing clients education around their options when it comes to different legal issues and guiding them to make the best decision for them and their situation. And so that's what we do. I'm happy to be here with everyone today. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Coach Damont.
My name is Coach Damont. My background is in credit, so I have probably fixed thousands of people's credit. From there, it progressed to where now I have one of the largest financial literacy platforms. I have thousands of people in my program that have trusts, that have family trusts, that have trust funds, that are now building trust fund babies. They also have land trusts, and I'm learning a lot of the things that the school system never taught them. Also, we just launched a fund, so we have our own funds, a hedge fund, where we're able to now build 3D houses. We're the first Black developer that has a 3D printer. If you don't know what a 3D printer is, we can literally print a house in 24 hours, and we literally can resurrect it in 7 days and close on it in 14 days. So a lot of people in my program are on track to make their first million. Thank you for having me.
That's amazing. Yeah, definitely. Round of applause for you all. Each of you very accomplished in your own careers. Let's get started with the basics from the beginning. For a lot of minority businesses, they are first generation wealth creators. So what are some of those foundational steps that they should take to start creating generational wealth specifically? Anyone that wants to take that on, I'd love to get you started.
Well, my billionaire mentor told me that a lot of times in our community, we think that the first step is getting the money. He taught me, and his grandfather was friends with Donald Trump's father. His great-great-grandfather was friends with the Rockefeller family. So he told me that the foundation of building generational wealth is a trust. Actually protecting your assets, actually making sure that the generations coming behind you are taken care of, actually understanding how to eliminate taxes and how to become lawsuit proof and how to become prenup proof and all of those things that the wealthy people do. So I don't think that we should wait until we build wealth to get to build the foundation and the structure. I think that we should start with the structure so that nobody can take our businesses, so that nobody can take our land, so that nobody can take our money. So that I feel, and my billionaire mentor told me, that should be the foundation of wealth.
So if I can piggyback on that, don't disagree with anything that was said. The first thing you have to understand is we operate capitalism. And a product of capitalism is consumerism. And many people in our communities jump on the consumerism wagon, not understanding that to build wealth, you have to produce something. You have to give something of quality to the world. And so what I always challenge people to do is figure out what is the talent, skill, passion that makes you uniquely you. And how do I give that back to the world? The biggest problem is our education system tries to make you into docile workers. You really can't work a 9 to 5 and work your way into wealth, especially if you look like us. There are ways to do it. Now, don't get me wrong. We're talking about 401k, compound interest, all those things. Those things are super important. But the first thing is, what do I have to offer the world? And then collectively, how can me and my unit, your family, your friends, all work together to build something? Because here's the thing, a lot of people have bought into this toxic individualism where I can do it all by myself. But this building wasn't built by one person, built by multiple people. And most businesses require cooperation. Real business trying to build wealth requires people working together. And a lot of times, I'm from the South. I was a lawyer in the South. I failed to mention I'm a recovering lawyer. But a lot of times we try to do it so hard by ourselves, but we don't understand that a lot of these people, again, I was fortunate enough, being a lawyer in the South, to be on a golf course and just hear, that's when they really talk their business. And the country clubs and the golf, and they're working together. You think they're working apart, they really not. And so my thing is, what is your talent? What is your skill? What is your passion? How do I build on that? Now, a lot of times you'll find yourself that this is my talent, this is my skill, this is my passion, but right now I don't have the income or the capital to really get started on it. So then you have to do what I did. Start somewhere that aligns with what you do, doing civil rights, being a civil rights attorney, et cetera. And then slowly just expand till you get to the point where you can spread your wings and fly. And a lot of times that's going to require you eating rice and beans every day. You got to make a sacrifice on the early end to get to where you want to be. A lot of us, we want to be stunners and show off when we ain't got nothing yet. Sometimes, again, I'm newly single, but I pull up in a Kia, people like, hey, it's paid for. It's paid for. It's paid for. It's top of the line, Kia. That's what I'm saying. But I'm saying that I don't want to hold the discussion, but just cast down your bucket where you are. But you got to understand, what is my talent, my skill, my passion? But a lot of that requires you to rewind time and go back to a time before the world got its hands on you to say, what was the one thing people had to break me away from that I just love to do? Your mama call you inside to put this down, etc. Understand what those things are and catapult them. Like the good thing now is you might say, well, I'm so far away from that. We have YouTube University and all these things that can really help you to get caught up in, all of my degrees are in business, all three of my degrees, MBA, law degree, undergrad, but I do civil rights and policy change work. As long as you got the knowledge and the skills, as long as you get in this system, if you got a degree, it helps. But as long as you can spit something and do something in a way unique that no one else could do, they'll always be knocking at your door.
Awesome. I appreciate that. I'll add a few commentary, because I got a lot of lawyers and non-lawyers in the room. So I want to synthesize some of this information. So we talk about actually figuring out how you're going to protect your wealth, right? That's really important. Joshua's talking about how do you actually build the value for yourselves, right? Both personally and professionally, right? My mentor says this is called the business of you. You got to take care of that. And so I really like to continue to add on. Please, Jennifer.
Yeah, I'd go one step further, and I would say identify or define, first of all, the legacy that you yourself want to leave behind to your loved ones. And, don't focus on what anyone else is doing, but what is it that you want to build? And what is it that you want your family to have, as a legacy of all the work that you've done in your lifetime. Another thing I would say is identify your values and your beliefs, because whether we know it or not, those values and beliefs really guide us through the process of building our legacy. For me, I recently became a business owner, which has been a great experience in 2023. I keep 2023. Okay.
Say it.
2023. Exactly. And so, with being a business owner, there's so much personal development and personal growth that comes with that. And I've been able to myself discover certain beliefs around money that I didn't even know that I had, and were honestly blocking me from being able to build wealth. And even though I'm in my early stages, thankfully I was able to identify those beliefs, and I'm actively working against those. So think about what limiting beliefs you might be operating under, and bring them to the surface and really work on those.
I appreciate that. I really like to lean into this a little bit more, starting with you, Jennifer. Specifically, how does estate planning for business owners, how does that operate? What is the value? What are the benefits? And are there any misconceptions that business owners may have around estate planning?
Yeah. That's a very loaded question, I would say. I think I might start with specific things that business owners should make sure that they have as the foundation in their business in order to start building legacy and then go on to creating a trust. So first of all, I think we should get away from common misconceptions. At least growing up for me, I grew up watching soap operas or telenovelas. Yes, exactly. And it seemed that whenever someone passed away, the whole family would meet the very next day for a reading of the will, and the will would say exactly who everything would go to, and that was it. In my mind, I mean, they didn't really show the scenes, but in my mind, all the assets were distributed without incident and everyone lived happily ever after. But that's not really how it works. So, there are intestacy laws for people that pass away without a will. And then there's a process for people that may pass away with the will, but regardless, you still have to go through the probate process. And that's a very lengthy court process that can get very expensive and honestly takes a lot of time and energy. So rather than maybe your loved ones focusing on how they're going to manage the business that you left behind, they're busy talking to the probate attorney trying to get through this process. And it's really taken a lot of their mental capacity rather than having them focus on the business itself. So that's a common misconception of estate planning. I would really encourage everyone to consider a trust. A trust provides a private process for your assets to be distributed upon your death that avoids having to go to probate, avoids probate attorney's fees and costs, and it allows your assets to be distributed maybe in a matter of weeks rather than months or years that might happen with the probate process.
Thank you for that. Really appreciate that. So just a little education in the room for many folks that may not know. There's a thing called agency law. Agency law is really important. What agency law allows you to do is actually create legal persons that are separate from you as a natural person, right? I was born from my mother, I live and I breathe, right? Because the law exists, you have the ability to create a legal person, which is maybe not a physical person, but actually something like a trust, right? Or a business, as an example. So many of you that operate your business, I really want you to understand that you are not your business, right? You really want to treat your business as if it is a separate person from yourself. The more you commingle your business with your own personal identity, the more challenging it is for you to maybe dodge creditors, fight off liabilities, and more importantly, kind of separate those risks that you may be taking as a business owner. So what Jennifer is speaking to is an actual method where, as a plan, you can work with an attorney, actually design what your exit will be, specifically not just from your business, but from God's green earth in that respect. Anybody else, please, John?
One thing I'll say, they say a wise person leaves an inheritance for their children's children. And as someone who has done private practice before, it's like you said, in the telenovelas, it's probably ruined my marriage, but living in fantasy land. But it was fantasy. It's fantasy, right? So, but on that note, it doesn't happen like that. And the thing that I'll say is, a lot of times doing estate work, I would sit in court and see people fight over a will. I ain't never say that in the will. You ain't done that. There's people just fighting. And so I see a lot of folks that look like me in the audience. It's a lot of us that be fighting over wills and some people hide in the will because they don't get what they want in it. And I've been there, I practiced this. So one of the things I'll say, the good thing about a trust, as you were alluding to, well, first, before I jump to the trust, first of all, we can't be afraid to talk about death. It's the one thing none of us can escape. So we have to make a plan beyond this lifetime for the people that we love. Because if you don't, the court will come in and make a plan. And they're going to get a cut. Usually about 40%. So you need to be aware of that and have a plan set out and talk to it amongst your family members in a public display, no separate meetings with different people, because they didn't tell me that. They said this. Trust me, I see these fights all the time. So you need to have a meeting. This is the plan that I have set for my family. This is the vision I have for my family. This is where I want us to go as a family. This is what I'm willing to leave for you. And have that discussion out loud in person, and probably want to record it too, just so I ain't say that. Here's the recording right here. I'm just saying, people lie. You may not have killed somebody, you may not steal, but everybody lies. Just being honest. Ain't notice somebody check, hey, that'd be a lie. So we have to have a plan. So for those of you who really want to do a business and do a business well, Matt talked about, number one, you need to get your legal setup, whatever that may be, S Corp, LLC, whatever, starting out, those things are pretty easy to set up. Not as complicated as people make it. But you do that, but then again, thinking of a trust establishes a fiduciary to act for the benefit on behalf of the property and for the beneficiaries. They're supposed to do what is best for the company, the property, et cetera, on behalf of the beneficiaries. And you see these things happen, Michael Jackson estate, all this stuff, as someone who worked on the James Brown case for almost 2 decades, because it took that long to really break down the property once James Brown died. This is South Carolina. I worked with a client was claiming that she was one of James Brown's daughters. So you have to have a plan set up, or people are just going to fight, scrape. These things are going to sit. All these assets, the court's going to hold on to it, and they're going to get that cut. Trust me, the courts ain't just doing this out of the nicest of their heart. And so you need to have a plan, have it written out, have a meeting, have these discussions. And if you want to set up a trust, which I think is very important, you establish who that fiduciary agent is supposed to act on the best benefit of this property for the beneficiaries, to make sure that if you pass along, how would this business be broken up? How would this business continue to operate? Who's going to run what piece? And you have to have a plan, because without a plan, you fail. And a lot of us get in the business and think things are going to work out, but we need to understand, where am I now? Where do I want to go? And what are the steps to get there? And once you do that, then put in the legal steps, because again, the United States is a republic, meaning we operate under rules of law. So you need to understand what the rules are in regards to the type of business that you run, and then set up persons to act on behalf of that benefit in the event that you may pass.
Really appreciate that. And for any of you sole proprietors in the room, I just want you to know that if something happens to you, then something happens to your business. So when he talks about your legal structure for your business, you have the ability to create a business that can outlive you. And it's really important that you establish some type of a business legal structure, because it can outlive you as an individual. Leading into Coach Damont, I really like to maybe speak to, what are some of those, foundational things that people should be thinking about when they're thinking about setting up a trust for the first time? What are any misconceptions that folks may have? And then sort of where should you start, when you are looking at wanting to establish a trust?
As I said earlier, I think that the trust is the foundation. For many of our families, we're not able to sit down and have a conversation, like he said, and talk about death. I know when I was growing up, my grandmother used to say, well, I don't want to talk about that right now. Anytime we talk about that, I don't want to talk about that right now. And then when something happens, then nobody knows anything. So I think starting with just having the conversation is a start. And then another thing, when we start talking about trustees, and then we start talking about beneficiaries, and then we start talking about all of what our trust is going to be comprised of, many of us are like, I don't trust anybody. So we don't trust anybody, but we want to build generations of wealth. We want to build a legacy, as she said, because our legacy, Maya Angelou said, our legacy is everybody that we touch along the way. But you have to ask yourself, my mentor asked me, he said, will they know your name in 7 generations? 7 generations is about 150 years. So will they know who you are in 150 years? He said, the only way they'll know who you are is if you leave them something. So whatever that is, whether it's your house or whether it's the life insurance, we're learning more now about family banks and family offices. Like the discussion, like he said, YouTube University is helping a lot, but we need a team. We need to be able to sit down with our family, even if that's your husband, your wife, your child, and say, look, we're not going to live forever. Like I tell the people in my program, what happens if something happens to you and your husband or you and your wife at the same time? What do you want to happen to your children? What do you want to happen to your belongings? What do you want to, that's conversation we got to start having right now. So I think starting to have the conversation in our families will start, allowing us to build trust fund babies. When I grew up, I didn't know what a trust fund baby was. I thought that it was a bad thing until I met a wealthy man in LA, and he said, wouldn't you want your kids to be a trust fund babies? And I thought about it and I said, yeah. After I learned what it was, I think the Bible says we fail because of lack of knowledge. And I think now we are in a time where knowledge is more available than ever before. And we got to find out what these terms are. What are trust funds? How you create a trust fund? What is a trustee? What is a grantor? What is a beneficiary? What is a trust fund baby? How do you put your business inside of a trust? How do you make yourself asset, have levels of asset protection. So I think just having the conversation is the foundation.
I really appreciate that. And I like to lean into that a little bit more because my mentor, Dr. Pamela Jolly, many of you saw her last year. She was our keynote. She speaks to wealth being a group process, right? So you can't create, especially generational wealth individually. And so how often, Jennifer, should families meet? Should businesses meet with their leadership to really start to discuss maybe either succession planning or even estate planning, and then leaning in a little bit deeper into maybe that generational wealth planning?
Yeah, so businesses and families should be having regular discussions about their estate plan, what's going to happen when someone passes away, who's going to take over the business. Ideally, the review should take place maybe every 2 to 3 years. Having an estate plan is not a one and done thing. It has to be regularly reviewed to make sure that if there's a change in circumstances, or if you had a really great year that, had crazy revenue, and that making sure that your plan maybe has the portions of it that help you reduce tax liability. So where I'm trying to go with this is, let's say your business has a really good year, and you live in a state that has an estate tax, or you're at the limit for federal estate tax. So currently in 2024, each individual, including a business, can have up to $13.4 million in their estate before they have to pay an estate tax that can be anywhere from 18 to 40%. So let's say you have a really good year and you hit your business hits the $11 million mark. You definitely need to be having a meeting with your executives or your team to make sure that the trust that holds your business has terms to provide tax deductions, and that you have an irrevocable trust plan that's going to provide that benefit to you to not have to pay the estate tax. Other big situations that happen in one's life is if you have children, or if you move to a different state. Sometimes that's a good time to check your plan. If you have a will and you move to a different state, you absolutely need to update your plan to make sure that the will is in conformity with the laws of the state that you move to, because each state has different laws regarding wills. So, we shouldn't be waiting more than 2 to 3 years to review the plan. In 2025, it's possible that the federal state tax limits might drop all the way to 5 to 7 million. So if you've been, at the $4 million mark with your estate, potentially this upcoming year, you absolutely are going to have to get maybe an irrevocable trust to take advantage of some of the tax benefits.
Awesome. So let's lean in even deeper to our trust language, because you're talking about a revocable trust and an irrevocable trust. Just really speaking of the two types of trust, generally there's what is called an inter vivos trust, and that's a trust that is created and funded during life of the grantor, right? The person that's establishing the trust. But then there's also a thing called a testamentary trust, and that actually is created if the grantor passes away. And that can be established in some type of a will document or some type of estate planning document. But can you help the audience understand a little bit more about the difference between a irrevocable and a revocable trust?
Yeah, so a revocable trust is a trust that you create, as Matthew said, during your lifetime. It says who you want your assets to go to. It allows you to put in age restrictions. So maybe it's not a good idea for your 18-year-old to receive their entire inheritance in one lump sum. Maybe you want to put protection so that your beneficiaries receive their inheritance maybe 25% at 21, 50% at 30, and the rest at 35. So a revocable trust allows you to make specific designations as to your assets while allowing you to continue to have full control over the assets that are held by the trust. So you can continue to operate the assets as if they were titled under your personal name, as if you own them personally. And so because of this control that the person has when they create a revocable trusts are not helpful in limiting creditors' accessing the assets, if there were a lawsuit or, if you have some credit, hard debt and there was a lawsuit against you, that creditor might be able to get into the assets held by the revocable trust because you still have control over all of that property. Whereas an irrevocable trust is a type of trust that people can create. It's definitely helpful to create if you have a really high net worth, your estate is super high in net worth, or if you want to credit some of the assets from creditors, from bankruptcy. You can also create an irrevocable trust, which does take away your control. So once you transfer the assets into an irrevocable trust, there's no going back. That trust is going to hold those assets, and it does give you some more protection in terms of creditors. One other thing that I'd like to mention with the revocable trust, even though you do have access and control over the assets, and you yourself can't protect those assets from your creditors, within the trust, you can create trust for your children, and those trusts for your children will actually be bulletproof from creditors and will be protected from creditors. So there are different tools that you can create. It just depends on your family situation and what makes sense for you.
Awesome. I got minors in my family, right? How should I be looking at preparing myself to make sure that they're going to be prepared? Are there any things that you can do with a trust or with the estate plan that you can actually make sure you're looking out for the minors in your family? I'm talking about all my nephews, for example. Anyone.
So whether you have a will-based plan or a trust-based plan, you'll be able to nominate guardians for your minor children. In the event that you were to pass away before they turn 18, that guardian would be in charge of your children. Now, if you have a trust-based plan, that guardian might also be the trustee who has access to the inheritance or the funds that you left behind for those children and will access those funds to pay for their health, their education, their maintenance, and their support. But you can take it, I'd say estate planning is your opportunity to set your family up for success once you pass away and are no longer here, or even when you're incapacitated. So let's say you have a trust and the trust was set up so that in the event of any incapacity, that person that you nominated as a trustee can already start accessing those funds without having to go to court and ask permission for that. And then you can take it one step further. How much do you want to help your family in one of the most difficult times of their lives, maybe when you pass away? I see a lot of clients, they prepare very detailed memos as to what values they would like their children to be raised under when they're not here. What traditions and what culture do you want your children to continue to learn about or to experience even though you're not here? And so having conversations with the guardians that you appoint to take care of your children after you're gone is very helpful, to let them know, even though I'm not here, this is how I would like you to raise my children.
Thank you for that.
Can I just
Go ahead.
So everything she said, I think the good part about having that set up early is, again, when you pass or when you become incapacitated, things don't get muddled. The only thing I'll add to that, number one, to ensure things don't get muddled, number one, everybody needs a living will. Like, what happens to you in the event that you're still alive, but you can't respond? You need a person who you want as a power of attorney over you, because we talk about children, we also got to talk about y'all. You want that power of attorney who has power of attorney act on your behalf. And again, share it with the entire family, so there's no question. Like, I think, again, I've seen so many times we get into court, somebody saying, no, they told me this, no, they told me that, and everybody in the middle just arguing based on who you like at that time. I like her, yeah, she said that. Oh, you made me mad today. No, I remember, I think I remember now about this. So, but you need that, a living will. Everyone can make a living will now. One thing that we definitely need to do as a people at a Black and Brown Summit is to build relationships with an attorney that you can trust. Just establish that relationship. You can have a family attorney that you go back to off and on and keep a copy of the will. keep a copy of the living will, and the family can have a relationship with you. You don't pay all the time. You pay as you meet and as you need to. And I strongly encourage that, because I see too many times people die. There's a will, but the will disappears because it was not given to someone who could oversee that event. And people holding on to houses that's still in grandma's name, but grandma been dead for 50 years. So some of y'all know what I'm talking about. And the only thing I'll add to that, especially in regards to the raising up of the child or your children with values after you pass, is what values are you instilling in them, especially in regards to wealth in a capitalist system while you're alive. So one of the key things I always tell people, I like to read. I think one of the best books on wealth, there's two I'm gonna recommend. Number one is The Richest Man in Babylon. It's a really short book, easy to read. You can do it audio, but the main thing it's telling you is you should be saving at least 20% of your income and putting it aside. And that is so true. And you should definitely put it into like a Vanguard account where they don't charge you too many fees for having it. Vanguard charges less than 1% in regards to having a 401k or some sort of what's the one that when you die, 59, before you die, 59, you put money up into it. Thank you, Roth IRA, thank you very much. And you can do that, put up $6,000 in that a year, but you can also have a 401k account, ETF that you're putting money into. I recommend Vanguard. They do not endorse me, they're just the cheapest, and they charge the less fees, so I'm big on Vanguard. And in that, every time you get some money, no matter what it is, 20% goes here. Another 30 should be to pay off any other debt. So if you got student loans, you throwing that there. The other part, you put in the bills and just having some emergency fund. I think the main thing you need to know, number one, is how much does it cost for you to be alive? Meaning, I know how much money I need each year just to be able to have food, internet, water, all those things. You need to know that amount. And then you need to put at least a quarter of that aside in a separate account that you don't readily access. So that in the event that you hit an emergency, you lose a job, you're at least good for at least a quarter of the year. You're like, okay, I'm good. Now, if you're even smarter, you just keep putting more money in there. Half a year, I'm good for 6 months. I did mine for 6 months. So if something happens for 6 months, I know I'm okay on the basics. But the point I'm making is you also have to instill those things into your children. Because it's pretty hard to have a trustee come in, hey, dad's dead, and he want me to, he ain't never taught me that. I want to learn that now. So you have to instill those things early so those values continue upon your death. So one book I said was The Richest Man in Babylon, which is a really good book. It's more of a parable book, but it's great. The other book is The Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins. And it really talks about compound interest in a really simple way of understanding how to make your money work for you, because a wise person makes money while they're sleeping, and that's what compound interest kicks in. You have to understand that. Again, I make no endorsement, so I have nothing. I want y'all to win, so I'm not trying to make any money off any of this. And again, as you start to build those habits, you instill that to your children. You instill the 401k match, whatever your company offers. You match that, take that piece out of your check before you ever touch it. Put it into the same account and just let it build up over time. And those things, as you start to understand that, when you hit hard times, when I left my job, I didn't need to work for 3 years if I didn't want to. Unfortunately, I was stupid. I didn't know how to not work, so I started working immediately. But technically, I saved enough money for 3 years. I was fine. But that's because I practiced some of these habits from these books and things that I've learned. And again, I try to instill those things into my nieces and nephews. There's certain books that we try to read together. I have to say try, because I was always trying to make us learn. But you want to instill those habits early again. So in case of a trustee pops in, that those habits are already instilled, and it's just an ongoing learning of what you want your legacy to be.
Amazing. So just really leaning into that as a business owner. Many of us have family in our business, whether they be for free labor, cheap labor, however, expertise, however. But the one value that I really see you speaking to is financial literacy, making sure that that is being passed down from one generation to the other, as well as sometimes we got to pass it up a generation. One of the things about wealth in the Black and Brown community is wealth does not flow from the top down. Wealth actually flows from the bottom up. And so with that wealth flow, you really want to make sure that you are signaling some of the new learning, new information, technology, all of those things that you have access to now, because there was a time where your ancestors did not have access to these tools. And so it's really important that you identify those financial literacy components and make sure you're sharing that within the family.
And they're not teaching it in schools.
Yeah.
And that's by design, by the way, because there's a zero-sum game that they believe that if you all learn how to be financially independent, you won't get jobs to work for them to make them more rich. So you have to understand that. And so these things are not being taught by design. Like the fact that you don't know what compound interest is and you don't understand these things in school. And by the way, they didn't even teach it in my MBA program. They taught it in regards to a business that you work for. They didn't teach it for me. I had to figure it out for myself. So, you know, I know people like the Netflix and chill, but while you chilling, your family's suffering. So you got to be ever diligent, working as a team with your family, sitting down. This is the plan that I want to envision us to have and try to move forward. Because for most of us, Social Security isn't guaranteed to be there. So you can't depend on the government to protect you. You have to protect yourself because you know, while they're giving millions of dollars, billions of dollars to Israel and Ukraine, most of your communities probably don't get what they need. So you have to understand the United States doesn't have feelings, it has interests. And many of it is not interested in me. So you have to be interested and fight for yourself and utilize it not, because the knowledge is there, but it's just not, you just got to dig a little, just a little deeper than what they're giving you. Because they're giving you just enough to survive. Not thrive, survive. And the theme of this conference is learn, grow, thrive. So utilize some of the things people talk about all day to thrive, not just for yourself, because life is all about relationships. You know, if you make it and nobody else around you making it, that's a pretty lonely life. So please utilize this summit and the things that have been said so you can thrive, so your family can thrive, so your friends can thrive. You and your friends should be in commune about how do we want to grow up and live together? And it's not just a secret, because anybody, as long as you know your lane, your skill, your passion, you can always, and you can do it uniquely and better than anyone else. There is no competition. Only the competition is locked in your head. So please utilize this summit.
Amazing, amazing. The pandemic and COVID actually really shifted wealth and how wealth was going to transfer very, very unexpectedly. The baby boomers for a long time had been the largest sort of group that had the most wealth. Literally the pandemic shifted that. And the generation after the baby boomers, the X and the Y generations, now the millennial generations now have the majority of wealth. Coach Damont, can you speak to actually what types of properties or assets that you can use to actually fund the trust?
Well, pretty much you can put anything into a trust. So I have people in my program that put their land into a trust. They have land that's been passed down from generations to generations. Has anybody ever heard of a land trust? Land trust? All right, so you can put land inside of a trust. That's inside of a revocable trust, as she was just talking about. You can put your clothes in the trust. You can put your life insurance policy in the trust. You can put your house in the trust. You can put your jewelry in the trust. You can put basically anything that you own inside of a trust.
Really appreciate that. And that also is tangible property that is speaking to, but also intellectual properties, right? So let's say you write a book, right? The authorship, the ownership of that book could actually be owned by the trust. So any type of royalty payments for any book sales could actually go back to that trust. So intellectual property as well as tangible property can be a part of that trust. As we start to sort of wind down and wrap up, we got really deep, and I just want to pull back just a little bit and really gauge the audience and see where they are. Does anybody have any questions for this illustrious panel? Please, let me get my mic to you. Your name and your question.
Yes, my name is Caleb Thomas. I wanted to thank all you guys for coming out, and just if you can remind me who's here in Des Moines and who's not on the panel.
I'm in Des Moines.
Okay.
I'm here, I have a house here, but I'm always here.
The office is based in Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay, but thank you guys so much. Very educational. I was just wondering if I came to those who are in Des Moines, can you kind of tell us what is a fee? Because you've given us the wisdom, but now it's the cost. So can you just kind of help explain if someone comes to your office and setting that up, going from this, you mentioned obviously having the will, but then the trust is a different part, and just kind of putting that all together, what's kind of the range of that, and kind of maybe minimum and maximum? Thank you.
Yeah, so working with my firm, the first meeting that we'll have is we'll go through your options. We'll kind of walk through in more detail what it looks like to have a will-based plan and what a will would do for you and your family. What about if you decided to go with the trust plan, what that would look like. And so we run through your assets as well to see if you do decide to go with option one, this might be the cost that you have to pay out. So after we review all of your assets that you have currently and kind of your goals for you and your family and your estate plan, we're able to set a price. We do have different prices based on whether you're single or married, but for my plans, they go from a couple thousand. A single person will-based plan would probably be around 1,000. And then if you want a plan for a married couple, they go maybe a few thousand. There's a third package which would provide ongoing support and support for your trustee in the event that you did pass away. That plan is a little bit higher, but it's an option for people to consider.
Great question. I have another question here.
As a nonprofit, let's just say you're a pastor, you're president and CEO, then you have your own personal business as an LLC. Is it one trust or is it separate trust? Well, these are the entities, but I'm one person that's in charge of various entities. How should I handle
that? That depends. So specifically, like I can answer that question. If you're a married couple, which I know you have a nonprofit, you manage a lot of businesses, but if you're, for example, a married couple, it might be best to have a joint trust for the couple, or if you have, if you're in professions that carry a lot of liability, for example, as an attorney, you have malpractice liability, we do sometimes recommend having separate trust. For a trust that manages different entities, it just depends. Typically you want to spread the liability around, and so have some trusts created, have some businesses owned by one trust, and maybe you want to have a few others to limit liability within one trust.
Great question. Final request, Coach Damont, can you tell us a little bit about the Black Card and about your program?
Yeah, so Black Card is the Black Card Club is my mentorship. So what I learned in our community is that a lot of us just don't know. So I've dedicated my life to teaching about trust creation, about credit, about funding, about getting capital, about real estate. So Black Card Club includes all of those things. We also have a club called the Land Trust Club. So a lot of the members, then we go to the auction. We just purchased 24 lots inside of Vegas, and we have 78 properties inside of Michigan. And then we're partnering with a lot of cities by helping them to find a solution to the affordable housing crisis. So we've been meeting with a lot of mayors. So that's Land Trust Club. So we buy auction properties, we put it inside the trust. We also teach them how to, anybody ever heard of capital gains tax? All right, so we also teach them how to defer that inside of their trust and things like that. So Black Card Club is the ultimate membership. And then Tycoon Capital, which I'm the fund manager for, where we have now a hedge fund inside the Black Card Club. So we're able to get the funds that people need in order to build, in order to invest, in order to flip, in order to do the things that they need to do as far as wealth creation.
Thank you. Can we give these panelists a round of applause? I really appreciate everybody. I'd like to thank the theme, the rest of the sponsors, and each and every one of you for being present here today for both this knowledge transfer, but also this opportunity to expand your network and continue to grow our ecosystem. That is all we have for today.
Can I do something real quick? All right, I come from a place where we plant seeds, and I love this summit. Terrence, he's a part of this. A part of this program, and he's a part of my program. So what I wanted to do, if I wanted to give everybody here a scholarship inside of the Tycoon School of Entrepreneurs, where we teach, I have a lot of the top speakers, a lot of the top instructors come in from all across the world. It's online. You can watch the replays. Xavier's passing out a flyer. All you have to do is scan the QR code, join the school. Typically, people pay us $12,500, but everybody here, I'm giving you a year free inside of our school of entrepreneurs. So thank you.
If you want a complimentary legal strategy session on how to set up your estate plan and what that would look like for you, I also have a QR code you could scan back here to schedule a session with you. Thank you.
Thank you all. Really appreciate it. Finally,
And she like, I'm sure she might want to this, but I don't I feel like there is nothing like And so I started doing it.
Yeah.
And it's honestly like when I that's awesome. I don't feel such good. Can I tell you, I've been sitting.
Yeah. Yep. I didn't grab my phone.
It's myself. My name's Mary.
I'm working with
I'll get a water. Actually, moderate.
Oh, you do this one first? Three.
They put it in your walk.
Three.
Don't put words out. Oh,
About yours, and then one more real quick one.
okay.
Three, two,
Yeah.
one.
Insurance. No, I work as yeah. No, that's right. They're showing agents that are in Iowa City as well.
I don't mention you have the number of speakers. Yeah, I'm a financial advisor. So I have a nonprofit that focuses on financial literacy within faith-based people. So I go to churches.
Trying to get into more churches.
Yeah, that's what I do. So I get into church. And do financial those members, because they're looking for the knowledge, because they also want to have, well, how do I apply my values? Right? So that can be a value in them. You got a card or anything? You got it. You don't have to know. Okay, but you know what's up. I'll be back. If you haven't found anything, that's really like a lot of sense. Every time I speak to one like this, I can't don't find me so. This year,
Okay.
Really great along.
So you wouldn't have done.
Yes, if you're looking for someone to graduate for decent things looking at this community, you know.
This your bill?
Yeah, that's what I said. Yeah.
It's a long way. So then that.
Kind of started using that because you know.
Yeah.
That's where a lot of things is happening, but in the church. I think we can't short on this area.
University of Iowa.
They teach a lot, but it's
That's how they are. I didn't stay. Stay there. A lot of land. I'm graduating with very low. And hands down, the alumni is.
Just be there in charge of their.
Last one is. Yeah, I'm good.
Right now, I'm from Chicago.
Yeah, I'm actually.
Right. I do opposite. I'm not. So this is like, there's a guy. His name is Vito.
Is that the end? No, 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 no. Let us see.
Yeah, everything over. We about to leave up out of here.
Well, we want to watch that too.
It was
We want to see that too.
Right. I gotta get off of here. We need to talk to y'all later.
We got something to talk about.
That other